Welcome to Manti's Book Club. Today we continue reading through Profession Witch. If you are watching this on Twitch, you can find previous episodes on my YouTube channel, acidmanticore. The VOD of this episode will be uploaded to my YouTube channel tomorrow or day after or somewhere within a week. So if this is the first stream that you see, you can safely pause it and go listen to the beginning. Or you can continue listening to this one and figure the beginning out later. Today we are starting with chapter 22. It crawled off the stone pavement onto the green carpet of the roadside. The reddish arrow of the wild lily fell to one side. The roots rattled pitifully. The turf, swollen with a bubble, burst. The earth bulged out of the gap like a forgotten dog from a tub, climbed up like a giant worm, throwing out short tentacles, groping and filling the voids. A minute later, he stood in front of me, ugly, angular, looking like a doll sculpted from clay, without eyes, nose, and ears. He no longer cared about appearances. All that was required of the temporary shell was to be sufficiently material and durable to fulfill one simple purpose: kill me. He bent down without visible effort, pulled out a stone with veins of ore from the pavement, playfully threw it into the air, and then caught the hilt of a long steel sword. The moonlight slid across the black blade. My sword could not stand any comparison with it. I might as well have hit myself with the wooden rod. Without hesitation, the monster went on the offensive, swinging his sword like a zealous zoologist with a pin, but I felt like a dragonfly with lost wings. My hands were sweating and shaking slightly like I was a seasoned drunkard. My feet rooted to the pavement. The heart either didn't beat or crawled so far that it couldn't be heard. Oh gods, how can I fight it? I could still compete with the creature, if not in strength and agility, then in intelligence, also doubtful, but I wanted to believe. I had no chance against the Archmage. And it was the Archmage who opposed me. An ordinary master could not so easily switch from one element water to another earth. True, in a temporary body he could not use magic, except for the magic of the element he had chosen. But my magic was also powerless against him. The blade slowly rushed towards my neck, stuck in time, stopped by fear. A thick earthworm, caught along with the ground, looked out from the monster's chest and backed away in puzzlement. And then an epiphany came to me. It is the ground, just earth, teeming with seeds, mites, root fragments, and small pebbles. It is no different from ordinary dirt, except that it is poorly educated and stands on its feet. And am I a magician less than a year and a half old, afraid of 2 bags of hummus? Hummus. I shook myself and ducked under the creature's right arm, ended up behind it. Without stopping, with a sharp and side blow, I cut off half of its head, which crunched under the blade. No bragging, it was a great shot. I never expected it from myself. Alas, the brainless creature did not seem to notice it. The severed piece fell onto the grass and crumbled into fresh molehill. Lazily turning around, the creature tried to reach me with a writhing blade, an octopus-like tentacle stretching out after me. Well, I am a good runner and jumper. The living blade dug into the side of the fountain and vibrated violently, trying to escape. Crumbs of granite flew out like a whirlwind. Having released the tip, the magician swung the handle like a coachman with a whip. The blade obediently stretched out like a string and tore off the top of the fountain. Water gushed out in a single 10, like almost 20-foot high stream, generously irrigating the area. The flying piece hit me painfully between my shoulder blades. I couldn't resist and used my free hand for its intended purpose. I folded the obscene gesture and let my opponent admire it. The monster growled and redoubled its efforts. For the next 10 minutes, we enthusiastically ran around the fountain, screaming wildly, howling, stomping, and causing considerable destruction. Water gurgled joyfully through the side cut in several places, turning the stomping into squelching. There was a short pause during which the monster realized that if we continue in the same spirit, we will spend the winter in the Gavin. Fountains separated us. I was breathing heavily, ready to take off at any moment. Blessed be you hated workouts. I had a C in military training and B- in running, and in general I preferred to sit in the locker room, feigning all sorts of illnesses and injuries. However, without those trainings, I would have had a very bad time. Who are you? I shouted, trying to stop the stabbing in my side. The monster suddenly laughed, lowering his sword. The toothless mouth resembled a sandy funnel in which a predatory larva snapped its mandibles. Little fool, he roared. Haven't you guessed yet? That's all the better. Then you still have a chance to escape. And how? I was keenly interested. Kill him, the monster barked. Kill this white-haired degenerate. You fooled him perfectly, so finish him once and for all. Couple of lightning bolts into the log roof of the basement, and I promise to leave you and the gavel alone. Lesser evil. A burning roof over someone else's head to save your own. The plague still reached Stormin, wandering along the forest path for 3 weeks along with fire victims. Only those who lack the courage to oppose both choose between two evils. I'd rather kill you, I muttered through clenched teeth. You won't be able to, the magician hissed. We'll see about that. The earth splashed in different directions. A monstrous snake lunged towards me. I hit the fountain stream with a spell. The creature got doused with water from its crown to its tail and fell onto the pavement in a shapeless heap of dirt. What? Ate it? I will eat you, the monster vaguely promised, growing out of the ground next to me. I hurried to run around the fountain. Why don't you fight alone yourself? He agrees, I asked. Too much work, the creature hissed. Yeah, and little chance of winning? More than yours. We chose a very good place for the battle, easily restoring the reserve after each spell. I easily parried the thin rock fall and punched a hole in the enemy's belly with lightning, gaining a couple of moments. Or maybe you're just afraid of exposure? I asked mockingly, jumping over the earthen wave that rolled under my feet. And why did you dislike vampires so much? Nothing personal, the monster sounded. I need the gava. All of it. It must belong to me and me alone. There is a great power hidden in this damned valley, and by taking possession of it I will gain power over death, if that tells you anything. Of course it tells. You were dropped from your cradle as a child. That's what I thought, the monster grinned. This bastard is shaking over his secrets like a loan shark. He sits on them with his winged ass and does not want to move. And what did you find in him? A deceitful, petty, treacherous little soul. It's all about self-interest, that pretty face, until it shows its fangs. But don't forget that you are a human, and he is a vampire. I know how he grinds his teeth at night, scattering in front of you day after day in expression and assurances. Like the wolf wags his tail in front of a bitch, choking on barking at the feet of a hunter with a crossbow. In my opinion, what hurts him most is his reluctance to move. And do you know why? He knows how wide your butt is and how much it pushes. Well, that's enough, the magician roared. I never liked you. Perhaps a posthumous review will be more flattering. I still don't understand how she did it. Sticking out of the ground, one tentacle cut my knees and the second pulled my leg. I hit the back of my head on the stone, and this bad man stabbed me in the chest with a sword, pinning me to the ground. There was no pain, only bewilderment at the strange emptiness where the heart had just been beating. According to the rules of the chronicle genre, I had to make a horse wheeze, or a wheezed something, dig my hands into the merciless blade, predict a terrible death for my enemy at the hands of one of my descendants, and, in confirmation, spit blood in the hated face. Then depict a couple of convulsions and dramatically roll my eyes. But then I remember that I have no descendants and therefore I won't be believed. Maybe I should set my unconsolable lover on him. I went through all my acquaintances, but I still couldn't find a candidate for the Avenger. What a disgrace. You can't rely on anyone, you have to do everything yourself. Well, we've done it, thank the gods, the mountain tavern above me thundered. The sword that fell from my hand lay very close by, on the side of the fountain, with its hilt facing the square. It is not fair to hit someone who's lying down, I whispered, slightly surprised by the hoarse gurgling in my chest. Well, I still can't get around to reading the Code of Chivalry. The monster bared his teeth ominously. The head of the sword bent and slid into my palm, obeying the inaudible call of magic. The shifted tip fell into the crack of the side. Water flowed along the steel edges, tickling my numb fingers. There was a nagging, tingling sensation in the lower abdomen. Sucks for you, I whispered, sharply squeezing my palm. Magic surged through the sword down the arm, filled the wound in the chest with a burning sensation, and rushed further, entwining the black blade like bindweed. The monster choked on a thin, vibrating howl and leaned back, not having time to either release or pull out his sword from my body, along which bluish snake discharges ran with a whistling crackle. Not a single archmage will be able to drain a natural source of power to the bottom, for even a bottomless abyss will eventually overflow its banks if a fast, full-flowing river is turned into it. An abyss, but not a leaky bucket standing on its edge. The power flowed and flowed through my wounded body, obeying the last desperate effort of will. The monster howled, writhed, spat out spells trying to somehow get rid of excess power, break the destructive connection, but it was all useless. He might as well have scooped up the rising water by the handful, and the outcome was not long in coming. The monster was enveloped in shining cocoon, the screams were drowned in a growling roar. The earth shook and went in shook and went into deep cracks, the remains of the fountain along with the side crumbled and fell into a deep funnel, and then a light, gentle, quiet clap was heard. The radiance shrank to a blinding point, splashed with rays, and disappeared. Flakes of soot swirled in the air. The sword slipped out of my weakened hand and fell dully into the puddle. I didn't even know that it gets so dark in the pre-dawn hours. Then I imagined Leon standing in a puddle on his knees, staring the sword on my chest with a crack. "I'm afraid you'll have to turn the fountain into a well," I whispered. And these were my last words. A minute. Results and discussion. I woke up slowly, with an uneasy feeling that I had done something terrible, but I could not remember what. Then I remembered, and the dream immediately disappeared. I locked Leon in the basement. Nothing more terrible could have happened to me. What time is it now? Noon? What if he suffocated? Got cold? Froze to death? I forced my eyelids open and saw Leon sitting on a chair by the window with a thoughtful look. I wonder who released him. Later I found out that he actually managed to knock out the door, opening the jam. Leon got up and walked towards my bed. I quickly closed my eyes. The bed creaked as he carefully sat down on the edge. Nothing happened for several seconds, then he suddenly said, "I'm sorry." As bad as I felt, I liked the intro. I figured out what benefits it promised me, and languidly rolling my head on the pillow, I whispered, barely audibly, "On your knees." To my horror, he fell to the floor as vigorously as if I was about to knight him. "Hey, what? Get up immediately, I was just joking." "Me too." I leaned over the edge of the bed and found him squatting. With a sigh, Leon leaned back against the bed, stretched out his legs and closed his eyes. Then he began to speak, quietly, slowly, carefully choosing his words. "I have received telemail messages several times. There was the same text. The amounts were different. Payment for us to leave the Geva and disperse to other valleys. Not a bad price at all. Money, military support, almost a storming throne under the slogan, 'Down with people, everything to vampires.'" Then I just laughed. With what passion he promised me something that he had no intention of fulfilling. Unfortunately, the signal could not be traced. This bastard really held some kind of high position and was even a magician himself. Having achieved nothing with promises, he began to threaten. He said, if you don't take money, someone will take. And it began. In human cities, they began to treat us like rats. They gave us that gave a very moderate effect. Mercenaries with protective talismans and enchanted swords invariably lost to a guard or even an ordinary stick. Then they were ordered to work like us. It's weird that city sewers take in dozens of nameless corpses every day, but one person beaten in the neck by a shoe awl is enough to cause panic to arise. The magician pestered me day and night. It was no longer about money but about restoring a good name. I told him in confidence that it was not. Like, I didn't have a very good name anyway, and quipped that notoriety was better than nothing. They would meddle less with the Gava. They would be careful. Apparently, that gave him an idea, and the calls stopped. But the creature appeared. I cannot say that I felt sorry for the deceased magician. You can consider me a cold-blooded monster, but my first thought was to quickly throw the corpse over the border, so that it wouldn't sink on my territory. But before we had time to scrape the poor fellow off the pavement, the second mage appeared. He impudently materialized in the middle of the square and depicted holy horror. Oh, what's wrong with my colleague? What? Everything. I was sure that he did not learn about the inglorious death of his competitor from migratory birds. Seizing the moment, I dug into his subconscious. Very superficially, he had a very powerful defense, but he did not create it, and he hardly knew about it. I look, and just wave my hands. If he once possessed magical abilities, he lost them while showing party tricks in the taverns. At the party, number 2 got so drunk that next day the creature suffered from a hangover, and number 3 ran screaming around the fountain for quite a long time. Even I managed to jump out and see it up close. By the way, a few hours before his death, he tried to send me to the next world, but fortunately, he didn't really know how to do it. And this is a professional magician interested in searching for the truth? I won't believe it for anything. It seemed that a mysterious enemy was deliberately slipping me his unlucky low-value accomplices or hidden enemies, both clearing a place on the throne and defaming vampires. But if the creature were limited only to them, all humans living in the Gala were immediately moved outside its borders. The merchants who had turned away halfway were indignant and threatened to stop trading with the Gava altogether. I really didn't want to turn to your teacher, but if the master of theoretical and practical magic, the best in Beloria, cannot help me, then it's time to cover the coffin with tassels. But he did not come. He got old, became more careful, more distrustful. The fourth musician, who represented the school, pleasant old man, I assigned security to. For 3 days, my people trailed after him, tactfully lagging behind at the booth in the backyard. That's when he was awaited. Jumping briskly through the weeds, the booth crumbled into small shapes. Without much enthusiasm, after searching for the creature among the rubble and scraps, the guards ran to me with a report. Both claimed that that the booth did not feel any kind of unusual before the jumps, and after too, but during. Obviously, the monster lost control of itself only in short moments of the battle. If I had been nearby, I most likely would have been able to penetrate his thoughts, but such an opportunity never came. Your appearance was the final nail in my coffin. After reading the letter, I was ready to howl with frustration. I could tear out my hair as much as I wanted, but not a hair should fall from your head. Otherwise, I sent for help, but received only threats. If she, if with her, if again. Why, why did I even contact the school? With what words did I not burn you, teacher? It's one thing to take care of a frail old man, and quite another thing to watch over a mischievous girl in the prime of her life. You could you could have taken off at any moment. Well, it seems like you've already got a I've walked you, brought you all the way to the house, handed you over to the guard, and in about half an hour they tell me that you were seen 10 miles from the city. It was impossible to predict what would come into your head in the next second. Not only did you attract trouble like a magnet, you didn't forget to drag me into them. And the worst thing is, I liked it. Honestly, I reveled in this week as if it were the last week of my life. And it could have become one if you hadn't killed the monster. You will make an excellent magician, Olga. I am infinitely grateful to you for your help and born with shame for my stupid behavior. I should have trusted you more and told you everything from the beginning. Please forgive me. After such words, all I could do was shed tears, bless him, and die. I, as usual, prefer the fourth option. Never! You will not how to deceive your friends. You're right. I'm a horrible lord, he said repentantly. Well, I didn't say that, I objected. You did. Yesterday in the basement. I wanted to make sure that you wouldn't get out of the basement even if you were very angry. I admitted, breaking into a smile. Well, I'm not in the basement right now, he said, expressively flexing his fingers. But how did you manage to lure me there? Well, for 3,000 years, magicians have been improving telepathy and ways to protect against it. So you lied to me? Leon was indignant. Note, I also lied. Yeah, we're both good. Here, take it. The copper bracelet slid across the blanket, rolling down under my side. I hastily turned around, not letting it get lost in the folds of the blanket. And only then I remembered that I, in fact, was dying. A person cannot live with broken heart. I took the absence of hellish pain as a sentence not subject to appeal. Obviously, I was living out my last moments of merciful agony. I admired my courage and was amazed at Lon's indifference. Where are the choked sobs? Where are the eyes swollen from sleepless nights? Where are the bald spots from torn out clumps of hair? True, he was biting his lips, but he still laughed. I hope it is nervous laughter? I asked suspiciously, furtively feeling my bandaged chest. There was sharp pain on my side. And stop reading my mind. Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but unfortunately you aren't dying. What do you mean I'm not dying? I was indignant, sitting down and shyly pulling the blanket up to my chin. A narrow strip of bandage passed just under the breast, and the tubercle of a tampon could be felt on the side. He stabbed me right in the heart. Well, not in the heart, in the side. The blade slid along the rib, passed under the skin, and jumped out an inch and a half later. Check it out if you want. Strange. I could have sworn that I received a mortal wound. In the heat of battle, of course, the sensation of pain is distorted, but usually it's other way around. People don't notice the extra holes until they fall dead. Didn't know that I would turn out to be such a sissy. I almost went to my forefathers because of a trifling scratch. Did I sleep for a long time? Um, Day and a half. Sit back, I'll bring you lunch. Complete nightmare. I had such a spectacular death, accompanied by the singing of nightingales, the aroma of flowers, the murmur of water, in the arms of a handsome man, and, well, well, where else, pray tell, can I rest in such an environment? You should come to the Geva more often, Leon suggested. We will always be happy to fix this godly business. The week before leaving flew by like one day, bright, colorful, and wonderful. The quickly healing wound did not interfere with horseback riding, and Leon and I visited the Valley of the Seven Rainbows. Having prepared for the short train, which at the end colored the sky with not even seven, 9 rainbows, intricately broken by the draft effect. We walked along the shore of a fog-shrouded lake from which came the bubbling laughter of invisible mermaids. Finally lured the stubborn unicorn, and he reluctantly allowed me to reverently stroke the fall on the silky back. And in the evenings, grand feasts were held right on the square, to which all the inhabitants of the Geva flocked, both vampires and returning humans, and elves with dwarfs, and even wolves, seizing the moment they jumped onto the tables laden with food and helped themselves to their pleasure. Perhaps I became the most respected person in the Geva after Leon and the elders, but they are vampires, so I could safely call myself the most respected human in general. But the teacher never came to the Geva, limiting himself to a long telepathon conversation with Leon, and at the end of the week a pale messenger, constantly shuddering, appeared with a letter for me. I can imagine how much they promised him for 10-mile road from Kamnidezhets to the Geva. Poor fellow clung to me with a death grip and did not leave a single step until I escorted him to the outer border. And there he set off his horse at such a mad gallop that the dust at my feet had not yet had time to settle, and the messenger had already disappeared from sight, leaving behind a spreading grey stripe across the meadow cut by the road. Having sent the messenger away, I opened the letter and, with a stifled giggle, enjoyed the lengthy ode in my honor, lined with a long list of herbs and roots that I had to beg from Leon for the faculty of herbalists. One phrase interested me, and I went in search of Leon. This was always a difficult task, and I went to 5 or 6 of his favorite places until, quite by chance, I came across the Lord near the forge. He cleaned the black snarling stallion with a comb, constantly pushing its impudent muzzle with his elbow. Well, lay it out, the Lord ordered without looking back. What else happened? The teacher sent me a letter. You want to read? No. Sorry, always forget that it is indecent to read other people's letters. as well as other people's thoughts. Listen here, I found the right line. I bring to your attention that from today I am officially considered the headmaster of the school in connection with the unexpected death of Master Petrin, which occurred as a result of severe cerebral hemorrhage on the night of May 1516. So you will write a report on the work done in my name, for my name, and do not forget. So it was him, Leon said thoughtfully, putting down the comb. I don't know. Maybe just a coincidence. Did you know him? We met a couple of times. The Lord evasively changed the subject. What should you not forget? I tore off the bottom of the sheet and handed it to Leon. You need a card, the vampire concluded, glancing over the list. For what? What are you going to use to transport this haystack? I laughed, but somehow laugh wasn't funny. I'll take a little of everything, and I'll tell the teacher that I can get snow from you in winter. Don't you won't dare. Well, we'll see. The conclusions. Chamomile, pulled in the new crispy saddle like a corset, stood with her back to Starmin. She looked very unhappy. I led her in a circle, turned her around, but as soon as I released the halter, the spoiled mare arbitrarily completed the circle and again showed Starmin her rear. I was accompanied by the Council of Elders, in full force, Krina, several young and pretty vampires whom I managed to meet during my active recovery, Kella, who the day before mercilessly chased me through the forest, fields and swamps in search of the herbs ordered by the teacher, two stranger kids, and a yellow-eyed wolf imposingly basking in the sun. Leon wasn't there. There was no use asking where he was. I straightened the bundle of herbs strapped to the saddle, once again said goodbye to everyone, and again did not leave. And finally, I noticed from afar a white cloak and the reflection of the sun on a golden hoop. The Lord led the saddled horse by the bridle, and I felt such relief as if he was going to accompany me all the way to Stormy. I said goodbye to everyone again, confusedly and hastily explained to Chamomile her rights and responsibilities, not without difficulty persuaded her to ride head first, and then lifted me into the saddle. We didn't say a word until the ring of aspens was left behind. How I did not want to leave together. I felt like a child who had just been given away a toy that was promised for months or even years of exciting play. That sounds wrong. I felt like a child who had just given up a toy that promised months or even years of exciting play. The thought of grey school days made me excessively sad. The black stallion stood frozen to the spot, chewed the bridle, glanced sideways at the owner, like returning or what. Leon patted the horse on the withers in agreement and dismounted. I followed his example. We stood on the top of the hill as if on the bow of a ship, tossed up by the crest of an ocean wave. The spire of the town hall of Kamnidержец pierced the sky on the horizon like a silver needle. I turned around. The ghostly fog blurred the true outlines of the Geva like a veil blurring the too long nose of a newlywed. I want to give you a small souvenir, Leon unexpectedly said, on my own behalf. Just, just a trinket, of course, but still. With these words, he bowed his head, took off the amulet, and placed it in my palm, squeezing it before I could object. The stone was warm, smooth, the sharp tip pleasantly tingled the skin. I released my hand and unclenched my fingers. Golden specks sparkled in the sun. Well, it'll do. I tucked the stone under my shirt, unsuccessfully trying to soften the bitterness of parting with ridicule. As they say, there's at least a tuft of wool from a black sheep. Won't get a tuft from you, Lon reproached kindly. What? I screamed with faint indignation. What about those marvelous underwear, a symbol of fraternal friendship between our peoples? I'll frame them and nail them to the headboard, Don promised. Here, take the scroll. Give it to the new director of the school. Just please don't read it. I swear there's nothing interesting there. Only politics. I casually stuffed the letter into the inside pocket of my jacket and jumped onto my horse. Well, it's good that you warned me. Now I won't. Every magician, in addition to his name, has a nickname granted by the people, isn't it? He said thoughtfully. I think in your case, the people will not have a difficult choice. Volha from the village of Topley-Rede. In people's memory, you will forever remain the Redne. So what? I like it, I smiled. Chamomile tried to step forward, but Leon held her by the mane. I straightened out and picked up the reins. I hate saying goodbye. Say see you later, he advised. Whip the horse and don't look back. See you later, I repeated obediently, looking forward. I could protect myself from telepathy, but I couldn't stop the tears from welling up in my eyes. Stupid, snotty girl, I scolded myself, resolutely whipping up my horse. The smooth road and steep descent inspired Chamomile. Having round about half a mile in a hurry, at the foot of the mountain she slowed down and I still looked back, more out of curiosity. Lon disappeared. On the hill, slightly hunched over, sat a white wolf with curiously pricked ears. Shaking its muzzle reproachfully, the beast slowly rose, crossed the ridge, and disappeared from sight. I closed my mouth and mentally outlined the topic for my thesis. The field gave way to low undergrowth, and the straightforward song of the lark was replaced by the gentle whistling of finches, which turned into a fierce, crackling squabble. The raspberry tree began to move, and the good old robber jumped out onto the road with the same crossbow, and, to my opinion, the same arrow. You peril your life, he barked in a rehearsed manner, shaking his crossbow. I rejoiced at him like the prodigal son. You are my breadwinner, my darling. Well, what's new in the robbery field? Son recognized mother and turned pale until even his I forgot the word. I completely forgot the word. Freckles, right. He turned so pale until his freckles disappeared. "Have mercy, Madam Witch," he babbled, falling to his knees and rubbing his beard into the raw dust. I let him humiliate himself to his satisfaction. "Get up, you idiot, and behave with dignity when I dare to rob you. Have mercy! Don't deprive me of my lost property. Don't fool me. Only a complete idiot going out into the road takes his lost property with him. Well, were you going to give change or something? To give change or something?" The man, hoping to awaken compassion in me, wrapped himself around the horse's pasterns and passionately kissed her hoofs. Chamomile disgustedly pulled her legs away, stepping on the spot. I still took his wallet, for educational purposes only, praised him for his efforts, and promised not only to regularly travel along this road, but also to recommend it to all the mages I knew. For some reason, this did not make him happy. He spat at my feet, threw the crossbow into the bushes, and, crumpling the empty wallet in his hands, hobbled towards communications. The temptation to grab a crossbow as a souvenir was very great, but I did not want to dismount. Anyway, if I got it into my head to collect weapons that have ever been used to threaten me, I could open a small antique store. The sun was getting hotter and hotter. I unbuttoned my jacket, and a corner of a scroll peeked out enticingly from the inside pocket. "I'll just look at it," I thought, taking out a flattened scroll. "In fact, I will not read a letter that I was asked in a friendly manner not to open." The paper was rough and at the same time silky to the touch. In the middle there was a wax blot and ornate seal. A circle divided into 4 sectors. In the upper left and lower right, trefoils. In the other 2, rearing wolves. Yes, the paper on the cover is bad and the wax is completely useless. Look, the seal is already peeling off. Like, come on, the teacher will think that I tried to open the letter. It's probably worth peeling it off altogether and then putting it back in place with magic. The seal, as it turned out in the process of loosening, was firmly in place, but I still managed to pull it off. I breathed on it, said the formula, and started thinking. I wonder what Leon's handwriting is like. I've never seen it. It's probably beautiful, clear, confident, just like himself. I'll just look at the first line. There's still nothing interesting there except "Greetings, most revered," etc. And I unrolled the scroll. The letter consisted of one single line. "Volha, I've asked you." Next came the magic ink. This is the end of part 1 of Profession Witch. I think we're going to start part 2 today as well. It's all the same book, anyway. But maybe a short break. 5 minutes. Alright, it was less than 5 minutes, but it is my 5 minutes. That can be from 2 to 10. Part 2: Session and Field Training. Lecture 1: Draconology. The pale golden sun slowly rose above the humped back of the sleeping dragon. Flashes of light danced across the scarlet scales. The black ridge was framed by a blue glow. The triangular plates of the ridge seemed eaten away by the heat, as if the dragon had been roasted entirely on hot coals. The dragon was lying on his stomach, his paws tucked under him, and his neck stretched out with his head tilted to one side. Breath escaped from the narrow nostrils in two streams of steam, often interspersed with clouds of flame. The tip of the tail twitched nervously, rustling its scales on the gravel. It was a rock dragon, the most intelligent, cunning, and malicious among their tribe. Judging by the rings on his scales, he first looked at this world about 700 years ago. His shadow slid across the Beloria plains when there were no traces of humans on them, but herds of reindeer grazing in thousands, wolves howling at night, and nomadic tribes of trolls roaming. He remembered the simultaneous invasion of humans from the west and east, bloody hand-to-hand battles, and the destructive power of magic that turned entire armies to dust. He saw how cities grow and burn, how forests melt, and green fields turn to the motley squares of cultivated fields. He had survived more dragon hunters than they had hoped. If he had not shed his skin every spring, it would have been completely covered with scars. However, the dragon did not complain about his fate. At the moment, he was quite well fed. The pile of bones on which he lay eloquently testified to the calories consumed. After admiring the sunrise a little more, I shook my right leg and kicked the dragon in the side with all my strength. The steady snoring was interrupted by a mixture of growl and a yawn. The dragon rolled onto his back and stretched, extending his claws and ruffling the beige scales on his belly. Then he turned his head towards me, narrowed his angry yellow eyes, and lolled out his scarlet forked tongue. Psst, Volha, совсем Phew. You went completely crazy. Forgot to translate, great. The sun has already risen, I said calmly. How long can you sleep? You won't be able to squeeze into the cave anytime soon. The dragon rolled over onto his stomach, crunching the bones of his bed. I'll eat you and then go onto a diet, he promised, licking his lips. You'll get poisoned, I said indifferently. I brought you diamond. The teacher asked me to say thank you and ask, I checked with a piece of paper, an artifact in the form of a golden griffin pecking a snake wrapped around and biting it. Inventory number 32/57 12A. Why? The dragon frowned. The mentors want to enchant. It's a word. Trying to enchant the field. You need to know everything, Richie. You'll give it anyway. You will grumble and grumble and then give it. This is still unknown. The dragon intently studied the returned diamond. This is ostentatious, scratched. Volha, tell me, what should be done to scratch the diamond? Landed to practic, like practical mage adepts, I answered without thinking. No one knew the dragon's real name. Legend suggested that the dragon, having heard his real name from human lips, either falls dead or comes at complete disposal of a quick-witted little man. Our dragon preferred not to take risks, pretending to be deaf or irritably waving his tail in response to my annoying questions. The nickname Roar has been assigned to the dragon since his glorious past, which included traits on cowherds and sheep flocks. Roar was the name of a certain nobleman famous for his daring walks. The brave the strength was the blah, 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 blah. I need to start speaking properly. Great. The strength in that nobleman was pouring over the edge, causing considerable damage to the livestock. Without hunting for deer, the roar used to attack met herds with dogs. And the male pride of village boys. The roar was very handsome and willingly improved the gene pool of the villages under his jurisdiction. Our dragon did not encroach on the maidens, but he cleaned up the herds regularly. They kicked him out of one village, set knives on him in another, shot him with slings in a third, but they could not stop him from eating. And only when treasure hunters, and as you know, dragons have plenty of this stuff, came close to his lair in the Elgar Mountains, Roar decided to change his lifestyle. Having safely passed the archers on the storming walls, the city had not heard such an alarm since the fire of 816. The dragon landed in a vacant lot within the school and, in a thunderous voice, demanded someone more intelligent to conduct peace negotiations. The then headmaster of the school was assigned to the dragon. He really didn't want to go, but duty obliged. Negotiations took place. The dragon demanded permanent residence, free feeding, and protection from treasure hunters. In return, Roar agreed to serve as a living exhibit for the adepts, guard the school at night, and lend the magician gems from his extensive collection. The agreement was sealed with a word of honor, and dragon in this regard are even more scrupulous than magicians. And Roar settled in the backyard of the school, where a huge piece of rock with an entire cave 20 by 30 feet 20 by 30 cubits was teleported especially for him. The satisfied dragon dragged the treasures to the new home, lay down at the entrance, and apparently intended to spend the rest of his life there. Upon closer inspection, he turned out to be a rather nice creature, calm and collected. Pretty reasonable. Our dragon did not eat humans on principle. He considered them unhealthy due to the high content of alcohol, nicotine, and cholesterol. He inherited the treasures from his cannibal father and lent them very reluctantly and only with receipt. 3 times a week he was brought a young sheep, consumed it, and went to bed. That dragon and I got along great. He knew a lot of ancient legends and traditions, he knew how and loved to tell them, and I often neglected righteous sleep for the sake of nightly gatherings with him in the fresh air. Roar disappeared into the cave. He rummaged through the pile of treasures for a long time, sighing and groaning as if I had come not for an artifact but for his soul. I had absolutely no use for his soul, but some people thought differently. Behind the fence, a horse hunting horn sang 3 times, and a young voice loudly announced, "Your hour of death has come, scaly reptile! Come out for mortal combat!" "Who else is there?" the dragon asked with moderate curiosity, backing out of the cave. "It's me, a brave knight, the threat of dragons, ghouls, snakes, and other reptiles, the savior of the weak, the poor, the orphaned, and the wretched." "Would you mind getting the hell out, brave knight?" the dragon hissed with feeling, craning his neck and carefully peering over the fence. "Yeah, there he is. Boar-type armor, a mesh wither, rusty treasure sword, and the same kind of shield with the crest of an old, somewhat family. Brave squire looks out from the alley holding 2 horses, guilty, 2 nags. This is where the glory hunters are. There is no peace from them anywhere. You probably don't know, do they still sleep in those samovars? The knight's pot-bellied armor really resembled a samovar, and his helmet looked like a teapot on top. "Come out, you bastard!" the knight yelled, shaking his sword. "We will fight!" Should I come out? The dragon thoughtfully tickled his ear with the tip of his tail. "Nah, I'm not going. I know you adepts. Just you take a step away from the cave, and treasures are gone. By the way, take the figurine under your personal responsibility. You know, the armor must be fireproof," I thought out loud, "but the strings are made of hemp." "Hemp," the dragon agreed with a nasty smile. "Hey, knight, I have a maiden here that I saved for lunch. Would you like to keep her company?" I cleared my throat, assumed a poor maiden pose, one hand melodramatically pressed to my forehead, the other holding my fluttering heart, feet shoulder width apart, back arched like a yoke, and let out a piercing scream that turned into a hoarse squeal. Not only the knight, but also the dragon jumped up. I turned up the heat. Save me! Help! Uh, I am. They killing me! No normal knight would save a girl with such vocals. No normal knight would attack a dragon on the territory of the school of sorcerers, beefers, and herbalists. I hasten to your aid, beautiful maiden, the psycho declared enthusiastically, threw down his shield, pulled out his sword, and climbed over the fence. The lever allowed him to cross the crest of the wall, but as soon as the knight turned his back to us, on the eve of the descent, the dragon took 5 cubic meters of air into his mighty lungs, took aim, and breathed as hard as he could. A narrow bluish tongue of flame turned bright red, devouring the hem placing at the junction of the plate segments. The armor fell off, and the knight appeared before us in all the splendor of spacious family shorts, white with red hearts, with bald spots from frequent washing. In addition to the underpants, the knight still had on him a helmet with a burnt rooster feather, iron gloves, boots, and a silver medallion on a chain. The beautiful maiden, in an embrace with the scaly reptile, was dying of laughter. Succubus! The knight shouted after a short confusion, enthusiastically shook his sword above his head, and rushed at me like an angry bull. I hastily snapped my fingers, and the sword turned into a wild duck, a green-headed drake with white markings on its ultramarine wings. Usually drakes are silent, but this one, grabbed by the knight by the yellow paws, screamed in a bad voice, beat its wings, and intended to drag the knight into the sky. But he unclenched his hand in time, and the bird bolted into the sky like an arrow. The dragon lazily knocked the knight off his feet with a slanting blow of his tail, and pinned him to the ground with his paw. "Well, what should I do with you?" he growled, exhaling a stream of smoke into the lattice whizzer, and listening with satisfaction to the angry cough from inside. "Eat him," I advised absent-mindedly, following the drake with my gaze. As the distance increased, my spell weakened, and the sword, turning its tip towards the ground, flew down. "But Volha, this is against my principles!" The dragon was indignant. "And then, I don't like him. He smells like fried onions from a mile away." "So what? I love fried onions." "Well, then you eat him." Thanks, I already had breakfast." "Have you all gone crazy?" The knight suddenly became sanely indignant, tearing off his helmet. Quite a pretty face, not the slightest sign of madness. The guy was no more than 20 years old. "What did I pay you money for?" "Okay, this is already interesting," said the dragon, removing his paw. "It seems that a paid suicide club has begun to operate in our city. And what is the membership fee?" And the knight stood up, shaking off the dust from his underpants. "Idiots. Those are my grandfather's armor, museum value antiques relic, and you give 'em fire and smoke. It's a shame, Mr. Dragon." The guy spat bitterly on the darkened helmet and tried to wipe off the soot with the edge of his palm. "You see what you did? All the varnish has come off." "You should also put a boutonniere on your chest," I suggested sarcastically. You're climbing, one might say, into the dragon's mouth, but you dress like you're on a parade. Well, the girl is looking. The guy looked down. Where? Here she is, like holding horses around the corner. Oh, that brave squire. The dragon lay down, tucked his paws under himself, and wrapped his tail around his body. Come on, young man, tell me how this happened to you. Okay, can you growl from time to time? For what? Well, to let her think that we are fighting. I snorted into my fist. Maybe I should rip your leg off and throw it over the fence? For plausibility, the dragon suggested. No, not a leg, then I answered after thinking quite seriously. Better like this. With these words, he picked up the sword and threw it over the fence. Let her think that we're fighting hand to hand. The school shook with wild laughter. The dragon fell onto his side, wiping his tears and coughing up smoke. It seemed that the knight actually had a good chance of killing the dragon with his bare hands. Well, okay, the dragon said, laughing. Come on, tell me what kind of show this scaly reptile is. The knight rummaged in his helmet and pulled out from behind the lining a parchment folded in four, which, after hesitating, he handed to me. The giver of this, I read aloud, is allowed to destroy the dragon that lives at the school of magicians, pythians, and herbalists, due to the desire of the latter, a decrepit and weak reptile, to die in a fair fight and not because of approaching old age. I am the decrepit one, the dragon growled, puffing out flames. I am the weak one. I will put all of us, all of you, on one claw and squeeze with another. Great, great! The knight's eyes shone with delight. Now jump up and make the ground shake. I'll jump for you now. I'll stomp on you so hard that there won't be a wet spot left. Oh, look, the fucking hunter! Roar was seriously furious. For the amount of 20 gold, with the right to remove the head. I finished reading in confusion. Signature Stalker V.D. Pitharchuk. Whose head is not specified? The dragon asked, seething with indignation. Well, according to the text, it looks like yours, I said, looking at the parchment in the light. The worst paper kind they give adepts for taking notes in lectures. Probably one of ours was joking. Joking? Now the knight lost his temper. I paid him in advance. Well, say bye to your money, I whistled. And the head, if I don't bring the dragon's head to the bride's guardian, he won't give his consent to the marriage. Bring someone else's head, I advised. I have a troll friend. For 5 coins he will cut you a whole bag of the stuff. We expected swearing, curses and threats, but the knight only laughed bitterly and began to collect fragments of his armor in a pile. Well, that means it's not fate. It will be a lesson for me for the future. Don't you have any kind of rope? I can't walk down the street in underpants. I like him, the dragon suddenly declared. Determined kid, but he knows when to back off. Well, Volka, shall we help the boy? Easily. I closed my eyes and concentrated on weaving magical canvas. What is she doing? The knight asked in a whisper. Oh, she seems to be not breathing. Of course, spells are cast in one breath. The dragon was calm. I practiced magic techniques more than once in his company. Now, if she falls or turns into something, then we'll worry. Oh, the horror! Volga! Huh? I opened my eyes and saw the thing I had created. The face materialized straight out of thin air and loudly plopped down at the knight's feet. This terrible creation did not resemble any living creature, especially a dragon. Most of the most of the head was covered with silvery fish scales, with rare inclusions of thick bristles. At the base of the long narrow snout, two crayfish eyes sat on stalks, equipped with the long thick eyelashes of an opera diva. Branched deer antlers of bright green color grew between the eyes. An orange forked tongue hung from the corner of its mouth, and countless fangs curved in different directions, so it wasn't clear how they could chew anything at all. Abstractionist! The dragon hissed, half closing his eyes in admiration. What a rare filth! I tried. I modestly looked down. That's for me? The young man beamed as if he had been handed not a disgusting thing but a cup of night's tournament. Thanks a lot. I don't know how to thank you. Oh, take it from here and be done, the dragon hissed in a weak voice. And about the robe, I thought, nodded in time with my thoughts, and something elegant and terribly expensive looking appeared on the guy. Unfortunately, this is just an illusion. In 3 hours it will disappear. I don't need any more. I take the girl to the tavern, show head to the friends, they'll fade. The the kid put the head under his arm and climbed over the fence. Is it okay if you keep the armor until tomorrow? I'll run after them in the morning. Yes, please. The dragon waved him off. Hey, where are you going? You forget your trophy. Stop, knight. Who may the gods forgive me? The fence almost collapsed from enthusiastic cries. The guy showed off his trophy to onlookers, and the girl sobbed with happiness and love on the white chest of her hero. Shouts of "Roll the winner" had long since died down in the distance, but vague remorse continued to torment me. Roar! Hmm? Listen, I think to have made a mistake with the vectors. The illusion will last no more than 10 minutes. Well, the dragon remarked philosophically, at least they'll have time to get to the tavern. Lecture 2. Magic Theory. May I sit down? Faster, Volga, faster. Lecture is going for 10 minutes already. 9 minutes already. One more, and I would have had to. Can we fucking translate it, please? One more, and I would have to write down a remark for you. Drumming his fingers on the lectern, Almid coughed delicately. The silver lines on the transparent board blurred and melted. Any questions? Hey there, on the outskirts of science. I'm asking you. What? Timar raised his tousled hair from the scroll with a three-dimensional crossword puzzle. Sorry to distract you from such a highly intellectual activity, but perhaps you happen to have some burning question. The graduate student inquired mockingly. Well, if you insist. The name of a saint, the patroness of wanderers, from its 4 runes, the second Alf. Roalana, get to the board now. To Olmid's great surprise, the adept successfully reproduced the formula and even managed to substantiate it, which 3 generations of magicians have struggled with unsuccessfully. The formula bore the proud name of Rodosh axiom, was derived absolutely by accident and could not be proven. Timar did not know about this, and for the first time in 200 years, the axiom was proven. Confused Olmid tried to object. The adept and the graduates together covered the board with columns of numbers and signs, but only got completely confused in the calculations. Okay, sit down, it's a draw. The graduate gave up. Well, good for nothing children. Open your notes. New topic. The board blinked and a series of formulas with numbers appeared on it. Armed with white narrow beam that slipped out of his index finger, Almid began to give explanations in a clear pattern. The essence of the lesson came down to a spell with which you could turn an enemy into stone, having a basilisk tooth with you. Almid did not have a tooth, and without it the adepts imagined the mechanisms of the spell very vaguely. Having outlined the formulas, the class buzzed like a beehive. In the back row, they played cards. In the front row, they played rune dice. I carefully scratched out a verse on the desk with the following content: I am a fool and you're a fool. Go to Prague Mag Fag. Timar raised his hand decisively. Yes? Almid, who was despondent, rejoiced. Would you like me to bring you a basilisk tooth? Suggested the adept. So we'll show you the spell. We all knew where to get the notorious tooth, but only Timar plucked up the courage to offer this to the teacher. Silence reigned in the classroom, heavy and sticky like a thundercloud. But there was no thunder and lightning. Almid poked the scroll with the marks, pinched his red beard, and shrugged his shoulders uncertainly. Timar snapped his fingers and disappeared in a puff of smoke, causing the occupants of the neighboring desks to choke uncontrollably. Oh, we need to tell him to practice somewhere in an open field, Almid muttered, dispersing the smoke with a scroll. It's disgusting. It's like a burning a bunch of pig bristles. All adepts were able to teleport over short distances. I was afraid of this spell like fire and resorted to it only as a last resort. I'd rather run undignifiedly down the corridor than crumble into myriads of particles, risking losing half during the assembly. Less than 3 minutes had passed when an enraged teacher burst into the classroom. Again, he yelled from the doorway, will there ever be an end to this chaos, I ask you? We wisely remained silent. Almid tactfully retreated to a corner, not preventing his colleague from speaking. Disgrace! Stopping at the pulpit, the teacher called to us without answer. My heart bleeds when I remember the Museum of Unnatural History. Rare exhibits are dying due to the fault of adepts. Instead of taking knowledge out of the museum, they take out fragments of the exhibits. The forest kikimora had been plucked for amulets. The claws of swamp mafka have been pulled out for love potions. The griffins don't have a single feather left. Just now, literally in broad daylight, the last tooth was knocked out of the basilisk's mouth. I don't know who did this and why, but the scoundrel will be punished to the fullest extent of the law. In the middle of his angry monologue, the door swung open, clunking against the frame, and into the audience, with a triumphant cry, "Brought it!" Tamar burst in. What did you bring? The teacher deftly grabbed the adept by the collar and turned him around to face him. Good news? Tamar wasn't embarrassed. In the dining room for the second course, apple pies. What do you have in your hand? In which hand? In this one. While the teacher was trying to unclench the clenched fingers of Tamar's left hand, the guy with his right hand from behind his back threw out the tooth. Almid silently took a soft step forward and covered the tooth with the sole of his boot. Timar obeyed. In his fist, the adept hit the crumpled cheat sheet with the help of which he had so brilliantly passed the test at the blackboard. "We'll see how you pass the exam tomorrow," the teacher threatened, cooling down, looked around the class with a long, penetrated look, nodded to Almit, and left. The old magician would never have allowed himself to evaporate in front of the adepts, considering such magic to be pure window dressing. Almit sighed, glanced sideways at the closed door, and bent down to pick up the tooth. "So, let's get started," he said, throwing the tooth into the flask of cool bile. The liquid bubbled happily. "Listen, unlucky children, and remember well, for if this tooth is really the last, as our respected master the Yanir claims, there will be no second attempt." And no repetition of the experiment. In general, I don't like this story with the museum. Something strange is going on there. Basilisks have 4 teeth. I had already completed 2 classes, which means there should have been 1 more left. What, one wonders, will the 4th group, that is, the alchemists, do? Well, quickly, run after them. We'll conduct a joint lesson. Oh, Leshy, what a stink. Open the windows. We definitely need to tell him to exercise in the fresh air. After the lecture, Timar caught up with me in the corridor. "Volha, wait, there's I have business for you." I was very thin, short, always disheveled and cocky, like a young cockerel. Timar had a truly magical gift for both getting into trouble and setting it up for others. He could drag a live cow onto the school roof and shout the neighbor's pen during a lecture so that obscene language comes out from under it, unnoticed by the writer, throw a dead man's cyanotic hand stolen from a necromancy workshop into a saucepan, or even cast a sticking spell on a public restroom. Issue a permit for the head of an unkilled dragon, even more so. Timar was least of all worried about the consequences of his pranks, and if before I often kept him company, upon returning from the gala, to the delight of the teacher, I came to my senses, that is, I switched to more thoughtful and magically sophisticated jokes. Not finding the proper delight on my face, Timar also assumed a serious, mysterious look. "Volha," he began insinuatingly, "wouldn't you like to earn a little extra money?" "Working by specialty." I responded vaguely, groping the contents of my pocket with my fingers. 2 coins is smaller, 1 is larger. Either lunch at the tavern or dinner. Only extreme need drove senior students to the free school lunchroom. The spells cast on pearl barley porridge instead of spices crunched like dust on our teeth. We recognized them the way a troll mercenary, worn out by life, recognizes the subtle taste of cat meat in a rabbit served to him. It's kind of delicious, but it is impossible to eat. Meanwhile, Timar shook out 5 full-sized gold coins from his wallet into his palm. "Here, whole group shipped in. The bottle is needed by tomorrow morning." My heart skipped a beat, sweetly and at the same time alarmingly. Few of the adepts were awarded such trust, and not all of the chosen ones were able to justify it. The school is surrounded by a solid fence, seemingly wooden but as strong as a stone rampart. At night, a search impulse continuously wanders around it, and one has only to throw a leg over the top decorated with carvings, and the watchman, usually a erudite magician who whiles away his days in a sweet slumber at the entrance in the school lobby receives a telepathic signal by which they immediately identify the troublemaker and bring them down. There is a specific there is a special journal of comments. Every morning at exactly 6, the journal moves to the headmaster's office and lies on the teacher's table. Then the offender is summoned, questioned, seriously reprimanded, fines applied, and so on. Some might say, you're a witch. Why can't you leap or fly over the fence? You forget that the school was built by much more experienced magicians than me. In some of the classrooms, the sports and assembly halls, as well as along the internal perimeter of the school, along the fence, not a single spell can be cast. You can cast spells in the corridors, bedrooms, dining room, and even restrooms, but not all spells work there either. There is only one official way to and from the school, the gate. Cast iron, massive, richly decorated with scrolls and runes, topped with pointed stakes. They simply did not open to strangers. If you come on business, knock like a human being, and the knocker of the gate is pretty loud. Alas, the gate had the same negative attitude towards Velana, intoxicated smoke, and alcohol stronger than 6 degrees, that is, dark beer. Well, perhaps the light herbal mead of the elves can slip through. One day the gate did not allow into the school Almeid, mistaking him for some outlandish vessel for transporting alcohol. They flatly refused to respect the master who could barely stand on his feet, who had celebrated the end of his graduate studies a bit too vigorously. And yet, alcohol is occasionally brought into the school. In no case is it for drinking. The sealed bottle is furtively placed on the examiner's table next to the watermark. According to good school tradition, no matter how difficult the exam is and how stupid the adepts are, in this case the whole group receives positive marks. And in this mutually beneficial way, mentors find cracks in the fence. I remember how my predecessors coped with the tasks. One adept carried a thimble of moonshine into the school all night. The gates did not pay attention to such a small amount. The second brought one at a time in 2 buckets, a bucket of water for a glass of wine, and in the room he used a separation spell. You can also evaporate the precious liquid and make it rain behind the fence and just place a trough. Unfortunately, sooner or later the mentors found out about our tricks. The gates began to remember the constant penny pitchers and pay attention to the amount of hops themselves, and the fans began to drive away suspicious clouds. The easiest way, of course, is to create moonshine directly at the school, but if you do so and if you get caught, you will be immediately expelled without the right of reinstatement. Plus, this occupation is unworthy of a true sorcerer. That's why they choose the most gifted, cunning, and resourceful senior adept to play the role of a breadwinner. That is, me. I could not refuse such an honor, and Timar knew this very well, handing me the coins. What is the exam? Just in case I clarified. Timar suddenly hesitated. Intelligent traces. I was a little surprised. Almeid was teaching intelligent traces. He never particularly found fault with the adepts, and the subject was relevant and quite easy. However, not in Timar and his group and his friends. I did not understand how they crawled from course to course. Okay, I grumbled with a deliberately careless look. There will be a bottle for you. The adept beamed suspiciously brightly. We will finish here for tonight. Thank you very much for staying with me, and good night.